Imam Khalid Nadwi read a beautiful passage from Surah Al-Hujarat, and I was tempted to tell you the translation and tafsir of this beautiful surah, but it's long. I still am tempted to say something about it because my mission over the last nearly 12 years has been to help Muslims to connect with Allah's book. We're very disconnected with it, so much so that, I'm sorry to say that the majority of our scholars would perhaps, if I was to ask them, how many of the 125 stories of the Anbiya do you know of the Quran? Yes, and the ulama, mashallah, are amazing in fiqh. They will tell you all the details and the minutiae of the, the judgments about wudu, for example, okay? Everything. But, it really is very sad sometimes to see how disconnected we are. And one of the reasons has been obvious. Vast majority of Muslims are not Arab speaking. And even those who are Arab speaking don't understand it, to be honest. I studied in Al-Azhar and I was with the Arabs there, and very, very few. Only those who actually went to the masjid or sat with the sheikh would be able to, otherwise they wouldn't. So, why don't they understand it? They don't, yeah. What is something ऐसा कोई भी समझ नहीं है उन्नत नहीं असली तो फिर अपने वाला बाल कैसे आएगी जो सिर्फ 5 या 6 साल आगे जाएगा. And this is why there's nothing wrong in learning your book, Allah's book, in your own language. وما أرسلنا من رسول إلا بلسان قومه. You're supposed to learn Deen in your native tongue, in your mother tongue, in the language that you are comfortable with. Languages, to learn a language, 1,000 hours to actually properly master it. Seriously. I've seen that my niece went to Oxford University to study Arabic, and you can just imagine how intelligent she would have been to get into that. Oxford University has one of the best Arabic teaching departments. It's a 4-year course. 4 years of intensive, bright teacher, best teachers in the world, effectively. Best students. When, Alia finished and said, Alia, let's see how good you are. And she said, well, okay, don't test me. You should know, I'm barely beginning to now. Barely. And what about people who are average or below average? Learning for 10 years, it doesn't matter if they were to 20 years. No, the point is this, man. I'm not trying to say, all I'm saying to you, learn Allah's book in your own mother tongue, all right? And there are people who are fraudulent who say, I'll teach you in Arabic in 1 year, and you can understand. No way, Dad, no way. When I was doing the translation, it took me 4 years, and my daily routine was about 4 to 5 hours after Fajr, till 1 o'clock, then to know the job. That was my full-time job, effectively. I would barely be able to do 1 page in a day. I had to reflect, I had to consult so many tafsir to make sure I'm doing the right, okay? So, I don't know what's the problem with you people. Everywhere, this is the same problem, you just don't. And one of the reasons I know, of course, and some of the wonderful translators have also alluded to it, is, the translations, of course, have been in Old English. That's one big problem. I don't know why, and even what is really more strange is, the newest translation was done, recently, only 4 years published here from America, the study Quran, for example. And even there they use Old English. And you say, what's wrong with you? Muhammad Asad, one of the amazing scholars, he did it about 30 years ago, but he again used Old English. I don't know why, because who speaks the Thou and Shakespeare in English, eh? Why should you? It's the 21st century. We live in a digital age. We live in an age of artificial intelligence, my goodness, and you are taking me back to, 15th century, which nobody uses. What's gone wrong with Muslims? I honestly can't understand what's gone. That's one, the fact that we haven't used the right language. Professor Abdul Halim, Muhammad Abdul Halim, is one of the greatest scholars of the Quran. He's an Egyptian scholar from Cairo University and one of the most brightest scholars of Quran, mashallah. Yeah, he's been professor in Cambridge and lately in London University, retired. He did a beautiful translation as well. And he says, the real problem has been atomization. What? Do you know what an atom is? You know what an atom is, don't you? Atom of oxygen, atom of sodium, atom of chlorine, atom of gold, silver, uranium. These are atoms. Okay? Oh, something really interesting. Atoms by themselves are useless and dangerous. Every one of them. I trained as a scientist. My background is 10 years of research in biochemistry. So I understand something about science, all right? So I can talk about it. And, they're all dangerous. Can you handle sodium, pure sodium atom? Or when it's pure sodium like that? No, you burn you again. Oxygen is explosive. Hydrogen, will flare up in flames. But when you mix, and chlorine would poison you to death. But when you mix chlorine with sodium, what do you get? Your McDonald's wonderful salt, eh? And in fact, all compounds are made from atoms, yes. There is nothing by itself is beneficial until it joins with something else. And the bigger it is, the better the compound, the better the molecule becomes. And of course, that is where life comes into it. The bigger molecules of life. And that's another subject I want to go into. But the point I wanted to make was, Dr. Abdul Halim says, the problem has been this in our translations. We've atomized the Quran. Have you seen Quran translations where each verse is translated separately? Have you seen that, haven't you? And then another separate line, then they start another separate line. Each is on a separate line, begins with a separate line, as though they are separate entities. Okay? But we say the Quran is a nas. What is it? Nas. What is a nas? A narrative, a story, a writing, isn't it? Where have you seen writings where they do that? Eh? When you read a story, it's properly written. This is what Professor Abdul Halim is saying. This is one of the major problems why people put off translations. Because the poor translator hasn't joined them together to form paragraphs and stories. Such a simple thing. I was very privileged that I've been a head teacher. I was a lecturer in teacher training, particularly on moral, social, spiritual values for Gloucestershire University. So my background is in education, and so I learned something. And I was also, I was commissioned to write a book on Islam from what used to be Nelson Poems, is now Oxford Press. Asked me to write a book on Islam, and they gave me one of their best editors to work with, how to write a textbook. So alhamdulillah, I learned a lot of tricks of the trade, how to write proper textbooks. So that is a very popular textbook used in schools in the UK. And so I was thinking, and what's going wrong? Why are our young people not reading Quran? Why aren't we? Well, I myself always struggled with them, and it was very simple. Why don't we create a nas? Why don't we create those stories? Wherever there is a story, put it together as a story. Give it a heading, okay? And then look at what the Quran is saying about that story. If there are comments, you put them there. So I took that initiative. So first, I used the plain English. Secondly, I put them together as a text. So what you get is this. And this is what you get. You get it? Okay? You begin to get on each page 2 or 3 headings, which are actually sections. And now you can begin to see, wow, how it's moving, how the story is moving, how the chapter is developing the theme that it wanted to get across to the readers. Are you with me? You see, many people sadly here, I know most of you will be thinking, oh, that makes sense, the chapter is just, oh, that is something in the Alanya. Alanya? Oh, it's beautiful, but it doesn't make sense. Auzubillah. How dare you say that? In fact, this was one of the major criticism of the Quran by the Orientalists. If you read people like Professor Nordique, he was one of the biggest critic of Quran there, you know? And an expert, perhaps the best Orientalist who knew Quran better than any of them. And he would say, oh, this is just juxtaposition of lots of weird ideas. Juxtaposition means just placing things together without any coherence, without any structure, without any connection. That could not be far from the truth. It couldn't be any further. That's saying there could be nothing more further from truth than that. But we Muslims, our ulama, how often do they tell you, Surah Al-Hujurat? I can link it to you from the beginning to the last verse of it and show you how coherent it is. How this surah is teaching you how to avoid conflict. How to avoid? It actually analyzes what are the causes of conflict. 6 causes of it are mentioned there, all right? And then it tells you the solution, how to overcome them. But the way it presents it is just amazing. It begins by the story of the Banu Tamim, who came to Medina. This is revealed late in the 9th year of Hijrah in Medina Sharif. And when this particular tribe, Banu Tamim, became Muslims, they came to Medina Sharif. Okay? They didn't know the manners of how to greet the Prophet, how to address the Prophet. So they came after Zohar time, late time when the Prophet was doing his Qaylula, and they began to shout, "Ukhruj ilayna ya Muhammad!" Oh my goodness. You couldn't be more rude than that. And of course, some of the Sahabas wanted to beat them up. How dare you do this? So this was revealed to give them some adab. And then there was another incident which could have led to real conflict. And this was when Rasulullah sent some Sahaba as zakat collectors. Rasulullah sent zakat collectors to different tribes, and he sent them to Banu Muslim, and under the leadership of one particular Sahabi, you go and collect their zakat. It's time due. They should give zakat. And he doesn't. He comes back and says, Ya Rasulullah, they wanted to attack us. They were about to attack us. And of course, this was also untrue. He had been misinformed. Okay? So there was another potential big conflict could have arisen. So this surah addresses those issues and then tells what happens, why it goes like that. I just finished reading a beautiful book by one of your professors from New York University, Professor Jonathan Hart, and it's really amazing book about the righteous mind. And it's really, and he puts lots of evidence from neuroscience, from biochemistry, which shows something really interesting there. We human beings are hardwired to be good. What does he say? We are born righteous. Those are his words. We are born
righteous.
What did Rasulullah say? What did he say? Yes. You are all born. So people who are submitted, devoted, dedicated, pure and clean. And then, for Abawahu yuhawwidanuhu, or yunasiranuhu, parents then give them those beliefs. And then, for alhamaha fujuraha wa aqwa, which is very simply, we gave innate ability to use. What? Innate ability. What is it?
Internal.
No, innate ability. It's inside you, intrinsically. For alhamaha fujuraha wa aqwaha, the innate ability to recognize good and subhanallah. And the other point, the reason I'm mentioning this book is because he also trashes one of the old European and Western idea of the reason is mighty. What? Reason is? And this is what they say. Oh, if it doesn't conform to reason, we reject it. But it's yours, And this is actually latest research. Over the last 2 decades, it's now becoming very popular among psychologists philosophers and you know, people who are interested in ethics. No. Intuition first and strategic reasoning second. Well, this is precisely what our deen, this is precisely what the Quran and Islam has said there. No? So look, you are pure. You know, how many times do you have to reason about doing something good? Never. It's intuitive. It is intuitive. It is innate. It is spontaneous, instantly. How long does it take you to decide whether I should be charitable or not? You know that. It's like that. SubhanAllah. Anyway, I don't know where we started, but you know, coming back to Surah Al-Hujurat, I want you to read that, you know. And what I do in my translation is, so I can show you, and you will honestly, the way the Quran tells those three stories. There's another story at the end here, no? And you know, these people then said to Rasulullah, look, listen, you know, we have accepted Islam. We've done you a favor. As though we are so kind of, you're a political party and we've joined your party there. And the Quran says, no. You've done no favor at all there. Okay? First of all, we're not a political party, okay? We're not a political party of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so it dismantles that idea as well at the end. But the way it tells those three stories very briefly, and then it tells what are the causes of conflict. And those causes, to be honest, if you look at the best books on dispute, look up the best books in your in any kind of management textbooks. Look up what are the causes of conflict. Surah Al-Hujurat told us 1400 years ago. But the beauty is, it tells you solutions to it. Anyway, I'm not going to go there. I'll leave that for you to read yourself. But I was going to, you know, I'm taking the easier route. I'm going to just do Surah Al-Duha with you. One of my favorite surahs. But in it, I hope I can bring to your attention and convince you that every surah is coherent, joint, and it makes huge sense. It makes